So after watching a lot of videos and reviews of the Renault Duster online, I went ahead and I bought the Renault Duster Zen 4x4. I bought it about 6 months ago, and I'm going to be letting go of this car. But before I do, I just want to give a owner's review after 6 months and just kind of give my perspective on what this car can and can't do and what its good and bad points are. So one of the first things I want to draw attention to is actually what's good about the car. If you get into the interior cabin, a lot of people have mentioned the cheap plastics on the interior, and we'll come back to that in a second. But I mean, just in terms of the way the interior looks, it's actually a pretty nice looking interior. They've borrowed the air vents. This kind of style was in my previous car, which was an Audi, and it's a nice looking interior. They've got these dials here, which look quite nice. We're just talking about aesthetics here. It's a leather wrap steering wheel, which is pretty comfortable. It all looks pretty good. The seats are fabric. They're nothing special, but yeah, they do the job, and they're decent. The other features the car has that are quite nice is it does have a blind spot detection that seems to come as standard, and I did find that pretty useful on the car. This little touchscreen that they've got here is a nice little feature. It's not on at the moment, but it's got some nice features on it. It's got Apple CarPlay and Android, and you can also check how the car is doing. It scores your driving. And yeah, those are pretty nice things. They're not bad. Now I'm going to come back to these scratchy interiors. Almost every car reviewer kind of scratches their dashboard. You know, I don't know if soft touch is that important. It's not like you spend your time in your car scratching your dashboard, but there are some problems with it. So for example, one of the really cheap touches they've got here is they've got the clip that holds it in place is actually visible, which I think is completely unnecessary. And then another thing is that there is actually a material impact of the soft dashboard, and that is that this dash, it rattles and it shakes. I mean, in a 6-month-old car, it's been doing it for pretty much 5 months since the beginning. When I'm driving, there's always squeaking, rattling, or shaking of the dashboard, and that's one of the main reasons I'm selling it, because it's not even like I can identify one part of the car where it's coming from, where I can take it to the dealership and say fix it. It changes, and it's not even the same. Some days it's there, some days it's not there, so it's really hard to fix something like that. Another thing is that with these seats, they've got a very weird feature. I carried on hearing a squeaking when I was driving, and what's actually happening is that this part of the seatbelt clip rubs against the material of the seat, and it creates a squeaking sound. So I've had a cloth glove put in here that has prevented that squeaking, but I mean, that kind of hack is not something you want to be doing in your car while you're driving it. Another thing is that where they clip the seat belts to the door panel, this thing tends to rattle a lot and make a lot of noise, and it's pretty unsightly. I mean, it's a pretty cheap, nasty way to fix a seat belt onto the side of the car. So I haven't been a big fan of that. In terms of the way that these dials work, I also have some criticisms of this. So basically, let's just turn the car on. You've got these little dials, and it's pretty cool. They've got a little dial here that allows you to control the temperature of the car, but you turn it, and it's actually not very responsive. It doesn't go with the way you turn it. Often when I'm driving and I just want to turn up the heat or something, I actually have to spin it to get it. You can see what I'm doing there now. It doesn't respond. Just to get it to high, I have to spin this whole thing 5 or 6 times, which kind of defeats the point for me. And it also takes your eyes off the road while you're driving, which is not optimal. I just turned the car on, and I don't know if you'll notice, but there's this very high-pitched whining sound. I'm not sure if this is there to like alert people to the fact that the door's open, but it's pretty unpleasant. Another thing that's not great is according to this little gizmo here, you can direct the airflow from the vents a whole bunch of places. And you know, during winter, obviously one of the main places you're going to have it is down and towards you, so you can warm your feet up in the morning, or at least I need to. And the reality is that there's such, even when you've got this on, there's such a small flow of air towards the footwell of the car that you don't actually feel it. So it's kind of like actually having no air vent pushing down towards your feet. And I really didn't enjoy that part of the driving experience. I think if you move outside the car, the back seat of the car has been pretty good. I've had no issues with the carrying capacity. I think one of the nice things about this car is the huge amount of luggage space it has at the back. I never carried passengers, but it does look fairly spacious. I think one of the things that did bother me though is they have obviously you fill up your petrol here, and they've got the input here. This thing was broken basically from the day that I bought this car. When you pull the lever inside the car to open this cap, half the time it sticks. And I think it's been 4 or 5 times that I've been at a gas station and I've had to use a credit card to get this open, which is not something you really want in a new car. Moving around to the back of the car, one of the things about this car that was, I've got to close this door to get rid of this beeping noise. One of the things about this car that really bothered me is you've got this piece of plastic here that the license plate clips into, and this thing rattles a lot. I'll give you an example. Just closing the boot, you hear that every time, which is quite a horrible sound. And this thing eventually actually just came off, and I had a look behind it, and this license plate holder, the way it had been screwed in, it's got one screw here that has a washer, and it's got one screw here without a washer. And just that lack of workmanship, that they put a screw in here without a washer to hold the license plate holder down, I don't think that's like really excusable. And I think if you want to see something about this car that kind of like sums it all up, you actually have to pull open this boot section. I've got a rubber mat in here, and have a look at this. I mean, here you've got basically hamburger packaging that's taking up a big part of the spare wheel area. And sure, they might be trying to save weight and stuff like that, but you know, this is as cheap material as you can possibly hope to put in a car, and there's quite a lot of it. I haven't opened the boot up to its full extent. These styrofoam boxes run the full length of the boot, and I've seen other reviewers say, yeah, well, you know, it's nice for storing things. And well, there's actually nothing nice about it. And look, I mean, this little piece here, there's been nothing in here, has actually already come out. So that's quality workmanship for you. I mean, it's garbage. And the strange thing is that they do put in a full-size spare wheel, and it's a Continental wheel. So you know, they seem to skimp on expenses in some areas and not in others. But I mean, you don't want to buy a car like this and see that kind of styrofoam. I think those are pretty much the main things with the car. It is otherwise pretty functional. If you listen to the sound of the doors closing and opening, that probably is a lot more solid sounding than it really is in real life. The car feels very tinny, and I often felt like I was driving a really big tin can. And yeah, I think, you know, the thing about these cars is that they're always sold as this amazing value proposition, and that you're just getting this functional car with its weird audio stalk, and that, you know, the quirks of the car are offset by the low price. But the reality is that this car is not cheap. I mean, by any measure. It's sitting at around the same price as a number of its competitors. That they may be missing some of the spec, and they may be missing some of the size, but the build qualities of the cars is in my opinion far superior. and you can get things that are exactly the same price that are just they're at a different level. So it seems there's my take on it is that there's a fan club out there that was built up when this car was a good value for money proposition, and they're quite loyal to it. The reliability of the car is supposed to be good. My experience with Dacia based cars has not been good. I owned a Renault Sandero that developed such serious problems after 2 years of use that I basically had to get rid of it. And in one case, the handbrake locked while I was on a highway. So yeah, I'm a bit skeptical of that, but I think people like to justify their purchasing decisions. And yeah, as far as I'm concerned, if the Renault Duster was once a good value for money proposition, it is no longer. It is actually a pretty damn expensive car. And I think I'm going to come to the last thing about this car that actually worries me, and that is the fuel consumption. The car has basically two fuel consumption display panels. That's just the car telling me I'm out of fuel at a good time. So it's got these two fuel consumption panels, the ones up here, and you can see there that it's claiming an average of I don't know if you can see that, 5.3 liters per 100 kilometers. And the reality is that that sounded better than what I was doing, because I was filling up at the pump all the time. And I thought this is quite odd. So what I did was I ran the car down empty, and I went to a petrol station and I filled it up, and I just recorded how many liters I put in, and I then checked what the actual fuel consumption is. Just for like this 5.3, by the way, reflects an urban cycle. I reset it a couple of weeks ago when I filled up, so I wanted to see what it was for my urban cycle, and for my urban cycle it's actually closer to 7. It's somewhere between 6.6 and 7 liters per 100 kilometers, not 5.3. And I think the fact that this is inaccurate is actually a pretty big deal, because you buy a car or you buy fuel and you do all this stuff kind of like expecting that these kind of things are accurate. In this case, it just simply was not very accurate. And another really strange thing about this car is I have taken it on a couple of cross-country trips, and what I noticed on those trips is that the fuel consumption on the open road is higher than it is in the city. And this is actually bizarre. I've asked a number of people what the cause of this could be, but that's what it is. It just doesn't perform better on the open road. So it suggests that there's something seriously wrong with the aerodynamics of the car. I was driving at about 120 kilometers an hour. And yeah, if you want another kind of like annoying little quirk of this car, if you have a look at the speedometer, I'm struggling to get this to focus properly, but if you have a look at the speedometer, it's got all the speeds at 10, 30, 50, 70, 90, 110 and 130. And if you're driving in South Africa, that's not really how our speed limits are set. We've got 60, 40, 60, 80, 100 and 120. So your speedometer doesn't even actually work with you in terms of telling you how fast you're going. You can use the digital version, but I mean, it just seems a bit bizarre to have a speedometer that's set 10 kilometers an hour off what you actually need it to be. So yeah, like all in all, you can joke about the quirks of French cars. My feeling about this car is that it's got some nice touches, but it was basically it's kind of like they threw together a whole bunch of equipment. Some of it's high spec and some of it's just extremely low spec. So you've got your blind spot indicators, which is fantastic, and then you've got your burger boxes in your spare wheel well, it's actually been, to me, to be quite honest, a pretty unpleasant car to drive. And yeah, so as a result of that, I've decided to let this car go. It did retain its value fairly well. After 6 months, it's lost about 10% of its value, which isn't too bad. And even with a kind of nasty fuel consumption discrepancies in reporting, it is actually still relatively frugal for a diesel engine. I think it does pretty well. The diesel engine is not as noisy as some other diesel cars that I've driven. It's okay if you've got the music on. And yeah, I'll finish it on a positive note. I mean, I found the car's sound system is pretty decent. It's nothing amazing. You're not going to impress anyone with it, but it's more than good enough. Yeah, you can pump your tunes and enjoy it in the car, and it's got some pretty solid bass if that's your thing. So yeah, I know this isn't a professional level video, but it's honest. This is really what I felt about this car and how I've experienced this car. I do love cars. I do love driving. And if you're considering buying one of these things, I hope you watch this and make a more informed decision.